for these reasons while I'm writing, and they're very useful. We always have to be careful of hallucinations, though, because and Sketch Engine was the software that was being developed at the faculty where I was working, and it's now become the number one.
I really liked it because it's so stimulating. It has lots of tasks, and it teaches teachers how to teach the lessons.
If you have the word running down the center of the page and you see the words to the left and right of it that it actually uses, which is based on what we were just talking about, this Discovering Academic English. So I've now created this 12-week course.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we have a very special guest, Professor James Thomas. James Thomas is now based in Brno, Czechia, and he spent almost 4 years in Uzbekistan, first as a teacher trainer at the British Council, and then as the director of AMETISOL and visiting professor at Webster University in Tashkent. Professor James Thomas, and he has been presented at the conferences, and he has given courses in countries like Algeria, China, Italy, USA, the UK, and Kazakhstan, Slovakia, Slovenia, and other countries. He has been published in journals mostly concerned with education and language acquisition and technology. Thank you for coming to my interview.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's great to be here. And it's a pleasure to be back in Uzbekistan after such a lovely almost 4 years here. Thank you
very much. Professor Thomas, can you tell us more about your journey from Australia to Czech Republic and your way to Uzbekistan?
Okay, well, it's quite a long story because it covers almost 30 years of my life. But my journey from Australia was on a one-way ticket to nowhere. In fact, I wasn't heading anywhere. And I had a few months, almost 2 months in Vancouver, staying with a friend, then a couple of months in New York, and then in Lyon in France, and then I went to Italy. And while I was in Italy, I saw a job advertised for summer school teaching in England. And while I was doing that particular job, they offered jobs to teach in the Czech Republic, or in fact, sorry, to teach in Czechoslovakia. It was still before the separation of Czech Republic and Slovak Republic. So I accepted that, thinking I would go there for 1 year. But in fact, it was such a lovely, lovely experience being in immediately post-communist Czechoslovakia with all of the optimism of the people and all sorts of opportunities which I would never have had in Australia. So I thought, I'm going to stay, and I ended up staying and staying.
That's a really nice story. And what initially motivated you to become a teacher trainer?
I think it wasn't so much an internal motivation to become a teacher trainer. I wanted to work at university level, but it was also observing the way teachers were teaching, and I had many colleagues who were teachers, and I was given some opportunities while I was doing my first job to train teachers, and I found that I quite liked it, and I had good responses from them. So I thought I needed to professionalize myself in this area. So there was then a long period of self-education in language, linguistics, training, many aspects of pedagogy. So it was kind of a very long journey of self-education.
Tell us more about your work in China and how it influenced your teaching style and your way in academia.
Yeah, so the China experience has been very, very interesting. I've been about 30 times, always for short courses. And while there, my training evolved a little bit. I have to say, when I was first going to China, I wasn't actually working as a teacher trainer in the Czech Republic. I was working at a Faculty of Computer Science, doing corpus work and doing academic English training for doctoral students mainly. So I wasn't actually involved in teacher training. I had been before, and then I was having a break from it. But every time I went to China, I was doing more teacher training. And during that period, I had many very interesting experiences with teachers and their expectations. And one of the key moments while I was there was when some teachers were saying to me, these are all very lovely activities for developing students' reading, writing, speaking, and listening, but we haven't got time to fit them into our teaching because we have our course books and we have to turn the pages of our course books all the time, and the pressure is really on us all the time to get through the book. So it's really difficult for us to build things like this into our teaching. And I couldn't solve the problem immediately because I was in the middle of a course, but it led me to realize that what I really needed to be doing in my training was helping teachers teach better the 4 systems, which are grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, and functional language. And that was a big shift in my thinking about teacher training. So while, if you look on the internet even today, most things which are helping students or helping teachers help students, they're mainly skills-based, reading, writing, speaking, listening. But what I found was really useful for the teachers was that they could suddenly teach grammar in more interesting ways, which didn't need to be added to their teaching, but it would supplement or enrich the way of teaching grammar. And then I became more and more interested in vocabulary, mainly because of, I think, the intersection between that systems focus and the corpus work that I was doing, because corpus work is most useful for vocabulary, in my opinion and my experience. So I was developing lots of things for helping teachers use corpora. In fact, can I show you one of these books?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so this was the first book I wrote as an independent self-publisher. It's called Discovering English with Sketch Engine. And Sketch Engine was the software that was being developed at the faculty where I was working, and it's now become the #1 internationally used corpus software for many, many purposes. And this book was written to help teachers learn how to use the software, but it's very much teacher training about the things that you can learn about grammar and vocabulary and text linguistics from corpora, and it's all task-based. And that's just the workbook that goes with it. And I was wondering, could I present this book to you? Because I don't think you have your own copy, do you?
Yeah, no, I don't have.
Well, there
Thank
you go.
So much. I'm really happy. By the way, I read one of your book. It's how to do things in the ELT.
Oh, yes.
I really liked it because it's so stimulating. It has lots of tasks, and it teaches teachers how to teach the lessons in a task list.
Yeah.
So this book, How to Do Things in the ELT, really motivated me to become even a better teacher. And I apply all the things that I have found useful in them. But the whole book is like useful guide how to be a good teacher.
And I'm really sorry I don't have a copy, but I've given them all away to everybody. And when I was coming here to do this, that was the one book I couldn't find. And it's a pity because that book was written as a result of COVID, in fact. So what happened was that in 2019, one of the institutions I used to work for in England, NILE, Norwich Institute of Language Education, asked me if I would come to Tashkent to do some training. And they told me it would be for 2 months and then go home for a month, come back for another 2 months, etc., 3 times. So that would be a 9-month year. And I thought, yeah, that sounds really good. And I was working as a freelancer. I'd left the university. I thought, yeah, that sounds good. So, and then when I arrived, the British Council project manager, who this was negotiated through, said, no, there's no 2 months on, 1 month off, just you can stay for the whole year if you like. So I thought, yes, happily. So I did. So I had 9 months of teacher training at 2 military academies in Tashkent. And so was it March 2020, when COVID struck, they said, we're not going to send you home or anything, but you do need to finish out the contract. And this was before people had organized Zoom teaching or anything. So the book that you're referring to came about as a result of that. So I'd done a huge amount of teacher training in the 6 months leading up to COVID. And I'd done intensive courses with the 2 sets of English teachers at these military academies. And I had collected from them a huge amount of data because I'd observed, I think, 50 lessons during that time. So I spent the remaining contract sitting at home, going through all of these notes and lesson plans and training sessions, plus the ones that I didn't get to give because of COVID, And that's how that book came about. So it's really, I don't want to say thanks to COVID, I say thanks to the British Council for keeping me employed and saying, come up with a project. And because I have all this experience writing books, nothing gave me greater pleasure than to put all of these things together. And then at the end of the contract, I was able to send them a 250-page PDF, which became the draft of the book. And then that contract finished, and I had, I think, 3 months in the summer, in the beautiful 44-degree summer of Tashkent, which was lovely. I really enjoyed it. And so I spent a lot of that time rewriting the book for, not specifically for the military academies, but for a general readership. And then I produced the book.
What was the main challenge when you were producing the book?
The main challenge, I think the hardest thing was, or the most time-consuming thing, I think, was going through all of the observation notes and categorizing them, and then creating sections in that. I think it's the second chapter of the book about do's and don'ts in language teaching, I think it's called. And that was quite challenging. The rest of it was basically a collection of worksheets. And in fact, some of the worksheets are published. I've extracted them from the book, and you can download them from my website just as freestanding chapters anyway. So I was quite accustomed to writing teacher training workshop handouts. So that wasn't particularly challenging. Structuring the whole book and then editing, always editing and editing. Most of my books are edited by professional editors, but in this case I didn't have the time or opportunity to do so. So still when I look at it, I think, I can change this and I can change that. And because it's self-published, I can quite easily upload a new version at any time, which I don't do very often, but it's possible.
You mentioned your website. So what is your website about? Can you tell us more about your website?
Yeah, well, the website is basically a place where I put short, relatively informal articles about language teaching that I write. I provide a lot of support for my books. Like this book I wrote with Annette Eagle, who's a German teacher of English who lived in Brno for, I think, 12 or 15 years. And we were friends and neighbors. And she approached me about putting together a book of activities because she's rather drama-oriented. So this is one of the books which is on my website. I don't know if you've seen it, Out of Your Seat. It's called Out of Your Seat, which I think is a lovely title because it's all about drama activities being practical and the students are very busy. So she came up with the basic activities, and then my role was pulling the language out. So what I was saying before about teaching in China with the systems, the grammar and the pronunciation, the vocabulary and functional language aspects of the job, with the activities that she provided, I then supplemented those with other task-based, I call it task-based linguistics. So task-based linguistic activities for the students to do, which revolve around her practical drama activities. So that's another book I can present you.
Thanks
so
a
I'm
lot.
so happy to have this opportunity.
Thank
it's
you
lovely.
so much. So, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I teach young learners, and they adore the drama. And
Yes.
once on the conference, attending the conference, we were together.
Yeah.
And Estella was giving a speech about the theater
Yes.
in the education and how we can apply it. Yes, it's really useful, and I will apply it to my.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
There are lots of things there, and the thing that, because when Annette first approached me with these activities, they were just activities, and they didn't have a real language focus, which is fine. Not everything has to have a language focus, but I'm very much in favor of developing activities that are springboards for language activities. And one thing I do like, not so much with young learners, of course, because of cognitive development, but from teenagers on, I really think that students can benefit greatly from understanding language, understanding learning. And this is one of the things, it's very big in CEFR, this idea of metacognitive training. And I'm a huge fan of that, which, as my ex-student, I think you will remember that there was quite a lot of overt teaching and training in learning how to learn. And you can't learn how to learn if you don't have the meta language as well as, I think you have to develop your metacognition.
So can you tell us more about VersaText and what is it and how do you think it will influence on the ELT?
Yeah, okay, thanks. Nice question. Thank you very much. I like talking about VersaText. So VersaText is my baby. It's accessible from my website. It's just a button on the navigation of my website. And when you click on it, it takes you to this tool in which you paste a text. And then when you click on another button there, it says word cloud, and it produces a word cloud of the text. And the word clouds are very intelligent word cloud because my programmer has provided the software with linguistic intelligence. And one of the things it does is in the word cloud, the more frequent a word is in a text, the bigger it is. And that's normal for word clouds. But in addition, the colors of the words in the word cloud are part of speech, color-coded. So this is very unusual. This is like unique. And it means that you can do a lot of work with the text, not only in frequency, but you can then study the grammar of the vocabulary. So when you're in VersaText, you can click on a word in a word cloud and it will produce a concordance of that word in that text. So this means that if you have the word running down the center of the page and you see the words to the left and right of it that it actually uses in that text, then you can really delve into two things at the same time. You can study that word and see how the author uses that word to express the main messages of the text, but you can also see how the author has used the word. So you can see if it's used in any fixed phrases, in any collocations, with any grammar structures, or if it's used in any chunks. And that's very, very useful because if the students are learning language of a particular topic through a text, then they can use those observations in their own speaking and writing about that topic, which is, I think, extremely valuable. And then there's a third page of VersaText. So we have the text, the word cloud, the concordance, and then we also have the profiler, which gives some lexical statistics about the number of words, the number of grammar words, the number of academic words. And then below that table, it tells you the estimated CEFR level of the text, which is very useful, I think. And then below that, there are tables of all of the words in the text structured according to their parts of speech and their frequency bands in the text. So huge amount of stuff. It's a very light, white-looking site. It's very user-friendly, and it's now being widely used. And in fact, in autumn, I actually created a mini e-learning course for teachers to learn how to really get the most out of this program. Because despite its simplicity, it's a very rich opportunity for what I call learning language from language.
Is it free?
Oh, totally free. Yes.
Yeah.
No, the course isn't free. The website is free. Using VersaText is free.
After you work at the British Council, you started teaching at Webster University. When I was your student, and it's an honor to be your student.
Oh, thank you very much. It's an honor to be your teacher.
Tell us more about this experience.
Yeah, okay. So just as I was finishing the 2-year work with the British Council, I heard about Webster University, or Webster University heard about me and put us together. And there was an Australian rector at the time, John Granger, who I had a long meeting with and sent my CV, and after toing and froing, and the former head of the TESOL program had just left. So they were looking for someone older like me, and I certainly fit I fit the old category, but I also had a lot of experience because in Brno, I had been the head of the TESOL program there for 8 years in the Faculty of Arts. So I was offered the job and I took it. And then within 3 months of being in that job, a new management team came into the university, and things changed very much. And so it was a very interesting experience. It was my first time managing a large department. There were almost 300 students in the master's program and something like over 20 teachers. In my previous job, we had 40 students and 3 teachers, so it was on a completely different scale. But nevertheless, management is management, and it was really lovely working with people. And having worked with English teachers at the military academies for 2 years, I was quite familiar with the teaching attitudes, teaching styles, teaching methods, and the staff at Webster, they were really highly professional. It was an absolute joy to work with the English teachers, and I think we had quite a nice relationship. And I was particularly interested in improving their working situation. That was what I felt very much my job to be, or my role working there. One of the things which surprised me was that every teacher there was expected to be able to teach any one of the 10 master's subjects in the program, which you wouldn't find in universities normally anywhere in the world. People are specialists in teaching pronunciation or teaching syntax or teaching something. But here everybody was expected to be able to teach anything. So I asked the teachers, of all the things you teach, what would you like to specialize in the hope that in the coming years, because I thought I would be staying longer at the beginning, that we would be able to develop the teachers and let them specialize in their several chosen areas in which they would research, write, go to conferences, give presentations, and develop them and make them much more specialized in those areas. But in the 1 year that I was in that position, that didn't happen. It was obviously too short a time to make a change like that. The other thing which I was particularly keen to improve was the situation for the students, because many students entered the master's program with an IELTS 6 academic, 6.0, and this was the university's requirement. But what we found, and in fact even the previous head of the department had told me in a conversation when I was taking over, was that this level isn't high enough for master's work, which I wasn't really aware of, because in my Czech experience we never dealt with IELTS, so I wasn't really as aware of it. But as soon as I started teaching and I saw how much the students were suffering because they were having to read academic papers which are not written for IELTS level 6.
Sure,
They're written
it was
for
a really challenging experience.
Very challenging. And so what I was trying to encourage the university to do was either raise the level, raise the IELTS score, or have a 2-term period of English development for students in academic English, so that they could then start and do the year's course with a much higher level. Or third thing I suggested was make it a 2-year program, so that the students did 1 course per term instead of 2 courses per term. Because many of the students were teachers, parents, busy in other ways as well. So it was very challenging for the students. And in my position as head of a department, I had to manage the expulsion and suspension of many students who I really thought were not the guilty party. I felt very sorry for the students, and I really wanted to improve the situation for them. So what I did for the second year when I was there, when I was just a teacher, I wasn't actually working in the head of department. They decided not to even have a head of department. They have a coordinator, but there's no academic head now. And that's, I think, still the case now. But I created this book called Discovering Academic English.
Yeah, that's a really great book,
And I'm rewriting it at the moment. So it's only a draft at the moment. It's not. It will look like one of these beautiful books one day, but at the moment it's just in draft form. I'm still working on it. But this Discovering Academic English was a very intensive course, workbook for the students in their first term at Webster in the MA TESOL program, to get their English level up, but also introduce them to a lot of academic writing concepts and general concepts about academia, which are assumed knowledge when you read academic papers. And there were so many difficulties. So I think the feedback from students was generally positive. They said it was really hard work.
It was really hard work.
Really hard work.
It looked like we had one semester discovering academic English. It looked like 4 years at the bachelor's degree.
Yeah, yes.
Because it was super challenging. We had new concepts and we had a new approach to academia.
Yes.
But I'm really grateful for your course. Like, it taught me a lot. And I thought that I was growing professionally.
Yes.
With this book and with the courses.
Yes. I apart from the fact that it was so challenging and it was time consuming. It was very time consuming. But you have to do the work. And unfortunately, we only had 8 weeks.
Yeah.
So in this new version I'm writing, it's a 12-week course. And one day it might even become longer than that. But the current version is 12 weeks. So, and so the students said, it was hard, but we grew so much. And then what was really nice feedback for me was actually the teachers said that the students in their successive courses were operating at a higher level than they had been in previous years, so that they could really feel the impact of this course. So that was really good. But it was challenging for everybody. So my Webster experience is that I worked in an American university for the first time in my life, where things are very, very different. I've only worked in one Czech university. I haven't worked in other universities, so I don't know anything about the Australian system. I've never worked in a British university or anything. I've been an external tutor for British universities, but I've never worked in them. So I had nothing to really compare, just with the American one and the Czech one. So the American one was challenging for me in many ways, but I felt it was a really great opportunity to improve the lives of students and teachers, and that's what I really most wanted to do.
You changed the course, you changed the structure of the course, and it really benefited us.
Yeah, because the other course, because I didn't want to teach 10 different courses in 1 year, so I specialized in this academic preparation and then in the methodology. That was the other course that I really, and that's as you can see from these books, that's my area. So that's what I was most keen on developing. So I made quite a few changes to that course as well.
Yeah, methodology course was absolutely different.
Yes.
Because with you, we had absolutely different syllabus,
yes.
and different structure. But it also benefited us.
Yes.
Because we learned how to make a planning for the special methodology plans.
Yes. Well, lesson planning is extremely important.
Yeah.
And reading an academic paper about lesson planning is not learning how to plan lessons.
Sure.
So I felt the need to make a lot of changes to make it more impactful for the students. But I must say I loved the enthusiasm of the students, the work that when they had to give presentations, the effort they put into the presentations, the fact that they read what they had to read, they had to transfer what they read. They had to work in groups.
Academic reading circles.
Academic reading circles being one of them, yes. And then they put together a presentation which was very time consuming. It's usually quicker to do something by yourself than have to coordinate with 3 or 4 people. And then put together a presentation, make it quality, and then present it. And I was generally very impressed with the level of work that the students did. And one of the things I always build into my presentation requirements is I ask the presenters to have a task for the audience. Because I used to find in many situations that students don't listen to each other, or they don't take each other quite as seriously as they could. So you ask the students, when you're preparing a presentation, make sure that the audience has got something to do. And they did. And they usually came up with good tasks, and then there was feedback on the task at the end of the presentation. And then it was my turn for feedback. So then then I went into my spiel with feedback. And I found it all very, very, very positive.
Yeah, you're a master of feedback. You all the time you gave us a lot of feedback. But I keep all the papers.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I do too. I've got hundreds of pages of feedback on my computer. Yeah. I just thought that the feedback was really, really important.
Sure.
Not all teachers do. Not all teachers think that they need to give a lot of feedback. Now that I'm once again freelance, I moved back to the Czech Republic and I'm working freelance. So in the autumn, as I said, I created the VersaText course, and now I'm developing something called After IELTS, which is based on what we were just talking about, this Discovering Academic English. So I've now created this 12-week course. So there's this book, which isn't ready yet, but it will be in a few weeks. And it has e-learning support, so I have my own Moodle site. So the plan for this After IELTS, it's for anyone in the world who has done IELTS, met their university's requirements, and then is going to start studying in English. So this course offers many of the things which I offered in Discovering Academic English and more for students who are preparing to start to study in English they may be doing it in their home country but studying in English as you were, or they may be going abroad to study in English. So whatever it is, it doesn't matter. So I had the website programmed by a professional designer. It was finished like 3 days ago. And I'm now getting translations of many of the pages into a lot of languages, because a very good friend of mine, she was my British Council project manager in China, and I was talking to her about this scheme, and she said, you have to have it in the language of the students' parents, because they're the ones who are going to be paying for this course.
Sure.
I thought, that's really good advice. I wouldn't have thought of that. I expect the students who are going to do the course can read the website without any trouble. But if they're going to ask their parents to pay for them, then there. So I've had it translated into Uzbek, Russian, Korean, and Czech so far. But I'm going to add another 10 languages in the next few weeks.
Is it available now?
Yeah, the website's up and running. It's simply afterielts.com. So very easy to find. And it's quite a nice website. I'm very happy with the designer's work. And it's ready to roll. And 2 people have already enrolled with hardly any advertising. So
you can find this website in the link below.
Oh, thank you. Very good.
Yeah. Okay. Professor Thomas.
Yes.
How do you stay updated with current trends, and how do you incorporate them in your teaching practices?
All right. Well, this is a very interesting question. I'm not particularly interested in many current trends in education. It's a very interesting question about current trends, because my interest is still in the linguistic aspect of language teaching. In fact, Michael Swan, one of the great English language education authors, said, language teaching is teaching language.
Yeah.
And it's a great motto. And all of my work is still really focused on language itself, rather than many of these things which come from outside language teaching, but from education in general. And I'm really just not interested in them myself at this stage of my life. I've been through many of the things, and I suppose one of the big things that has always interested me is learning to learn, metacognitive things, and the impact of CEFR. And I find their recent publications very, very much more user-friendly than they used to be. They were very opaque, turgid documents before, but now they're much more teacher-friendly. And you can look at our CEFR document and use the descriptors they have for the various levels of the various skills and sub-skills, and you can determine where your student's starting point is, so that when you're developing a teaching plan, a long-term teaching plan, you say, this is where we're starting from. This is what the students can do, and therefore what they can't do, and what I need to do in my course to reach the next CEFR level. So I find those sorts of things really very, very useful. And the other main area, I suppose, is corpus work. And corpus work has been around, well, I was using it in the 1990s when I was first teaching at the Faculty of Education in Brno. And although the software has made huge advances, corpora have gone from 2 million to 50 billion words. They're huge corpora. The approach to using corpora in language education hasn't really made much progress. And it's why many of your classmates came into my classes saying, they told us about these things at university, but we didn't know that we could use them to learn from.
How to apply it.
How to apply it, yes, exactly. So I've spent a lot of time developing tasks which are corpus-based, or what we call data-driven learning. So deriving patterns and relationships between words and phrases at text level, at word level, so that students can use the language in the way that native speakers use the language. And, my Versatexts program does that on a very small scale. You're allowed to, or it allows you to study the language of a single text. And then you can go to a program like Skell or Coca, or a new one called CorpusMate, which I use a lot now. In fact, in the After IELTS book, there's a lot of training in using CorpusMate. And if the tasks are appropriate, then the students can learn really valuable things about language, but they can also learn how to learn. Because once you finish a language course, you've still got to have the skills to keep developing yourself. And if you don't know what to look for in language, then everything is just text. And you don't know what is a phrasal verb, Is take care of a phrasal verb? No, it's not. It's got a noun in it. Phrasal verbs don't have nouns in them. So having clear definitions of things. What is a collocation? There are many definitions of collocation. So understanding what you're learning, I think, is really important. And all of my books do that a lot. This other book I've got here, which I haven't shown you yet, it's called the Versatile Blank Book. And it's called blank because it's got 100 blank pages in it. But the 100 blank pages follow 65 pages of teaching students how to learn vocabulary. So, and it's very visual. I don't know if we can show this here, but there's a chapter on quick introduction to Versatexts, and then there are things about Venn diagrams and mind maps and semantics, features, tables, and many aspects of language. And here's one with topic trails, how students can identify keywords and phrases for each topic in a text. And it's all very, very beautiful, very visual. So this is one of my favorite books that I've written, actually. I'm very happy with this one. And it teaches students how to study language in many different ways, but especially creatively. There's a beautiful mind map of of Brno, actually. But it just shows how students can use words and phrases
connect to each other.
To connect to each other with the patterns and relationships, conceptual as well as linguistic. And it's really lovely. So I hope you and your students really like this one too.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And it's I'm very proud of that book. It's a lovely, lovely thing.
All the things you created are really lovely.
Thank you very much. Yes. So all of the sorts of principles I've been talking about metacognition, meta-language, use of corpora, training students, studying top-down from the text level, bottom-up from words and phrase level, grammar structures, etc. All of those are part of the training which is in the After IELTS course. You remember it from the Discovering Academic English. So that's all been extended and enriched now in this After IELTS course. So I'm really hoping that when students start university, after doing this course, they will enjoy the course much more, be more confident, and they won't experience so much stress. Because that's what really bothered me with students in your courses was the stress level.
But that's what the stress level was on the top level. I think it was super challenging.
It was.
Yeah.
And it was having to do too many courses at the same time.
At the same time, yes.
Having too much academic reading.
Academic papers.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of articles.
Yes.
Yeah, 2 courses at the same, 2 courses on the same semester.
Yeah.
It's too much.
It is.
Yeah. And we on the TESOL we didn't have opportunity to take 1 course.
No.
Only 2.
Yes, and one other thing that I've built into the After IELTS course, which I think we were leading towards, weren't we? We were going to talk about AI.
Yeah.
When I was working at Webster and when I was producing these books, we didn't have ChatGPT. It's that new, of course. And I show the students as they work through the After IELTS book how they can use ChatGPT for generating ideas, for checking their work, checking their English, for creating lists of particular types of words and phrases. And there's another tool called Perplexity, which I like very much. And it's quite similar to ChatGPT, but it has 2 advantages. One is that underneath the text which it generates, it gives you the 5 sources from which the text was generated, and these are clickable links. So in the text, it has little footnotes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for those 5 links. So that's really good because it makes it a little bit more believable, but it also means that you can click on that link and read the full text which it came from. The second thing I like about Perplexity is that it offers you 3 follow-up questions that you might like to ask, and that's really useful. So when I'm writing, and it's obviously much more efficient to get a paragraph generated by AI than look through all of those links which a Google search offers you. So I quite often use AI for these reasons while I'm writing, and they're very useful. We always have to be careful of hallucinations, though, because they make stuff up, and you really have to be careful. And they put a lot of nice, soft, gentle introductory paragraph and a nice, soft, gentle concluding paragraph. You don't need all of that. So you still got to edit it. You have to read it critically. You can't just use it.
Yeah, we need to put our critical hat on.
We need our critical hat very much. Thank you for mentioning that. That's a very good point. And so that's really good. And the third AI tool I use and encourage the students in this new book to use is called elicit.org. And it's specifically designed for academic research. So you can ask a question about what are the known effects of training students in metacognitive strategies, for example. And it will look through academic papers. It will write maybe a 120-word summary of 4 or 5 academic papers, and then it will give you a table of research which has gone into this research question. And you can do that for any topic, whether you're studying medicine, engineering, architecture, linguistics, anything. It's a very, very useful site.
Sure.
So training students for those things is really, really valuable.
So you have been teaching for more than 40 years. And what is the one thing you are the most proud of, like from your very huge experience?
It's a very difficult question to answer. What I'm really pleased about now is that I am no longer attached to any particular institution, which gives me amazing freedom to put into the books and courses that I'm now writing as a freelancer the knowledge and experience that I've accumulated through many, many years, some decades, of working with students and institutions and colleagues. And I've attended and presented at many, many conferences, been on all sorts of committees, and the things which are shared at all of those through all of those experiences, really make who you are. And I would recommend to any young teacher or even mid-career teacher, never stop reading, attending conferences, which these days so many conferences are online, so it's relatively easy. In the olden days, the cost and getting time off work, travel, etc., was all very demanding. But these days, you can spend a week online in the comfort of your own home, attending a conference and gaining a huge amount of very valuable experience from other people. And of course, you can share your own, and you should be sharing your own as soon as possible, because you in particular, but you and all of your peers, people I was teaching at Webster, have already got a lot of teaching experience. And it's a very specific teaching experience. And these are the things which I think you can really share with even people in your own area, let alone on a global scale or a national scale, but influencing each other, and you grow and grow and grow through these mutual connections. And I find that really valuable.
Okay, what advice can you give to the younger generation who wants to continue their academic studies and academic work, and what challenges can they face, and how to overcome, and how not to quit on the mid of the way?
Firstly, I would say, if you get to a stage in your research where you really need to quit, quit. But I would even more strongly say, try not to get into that situation. So one of the most important things is planning and having realistic expectations. And expectations we place on ourselves, but they also come from our friends, families, colleagues, institutions. And those expectations can create a huge amount of tension. And I think it's perhaps one of the reasons why so many students of your classmates, for example, they had pressure from these expectations from so many. While these expectations can cause a lot of stress, they can also be very motivating. They're one of the things which helps you keep going, is rising to these expectations, which is very nice. So planning is really important to make sure that you're never meeting a deadline at the last minute, those sorts of things which are fairly obvious, but everybody's got busy lives and they do let things slide until the last minute. So planning is really, really important. But I think it's also really important to have deep conceptual understanding of your topic. It's never enough just to sort of know what's going on. You need to look behind what's the focus of your study. And that requires a lot of deep thought, processing the main texts in the field. And if you can do this with somebody else, whether it's a professor or with a colleague who's interested in similar things, so that you get to debate and share and negotiate your understanding of a topic. And then you're constantly asking, where does that idea come from? What was it built on? Is it research-based? Is it somebody's opinion? Is it somebody's belief? Where did it come from? So making sure you've got a really solid foundation for your field, I think, is really, really important, because the new things that you keep learning then have kind of logical slots to fit into. And that really helps you understand and develop. And it's sort of this, I suppose, knowledge creation squared. It's really taking knowledge creation to a very high level, which at the level at which you're speaking or referring to, it's going to be very, very important to have that solid foundation. So I think a conceptual understanding is really important, as well as practical issues.
Professor Thomas, how do you balance your academic life and the things that you like outside your work?
Oh, that's an interesting one. Well, most of my life is my academic work, because I'm generally and genuinely interested in what I do. So a lot of the things I do in my free time are actually part of my work. But not only. One of the other things I particularly like is theatre. In the first half of my life, I was totally consumed by music, where I was a pianist and a violist and a teacher and a composer and a conductor. I was doing all of those things up until I was about 30 when I went traveling. So that's never left me, of course. So I do go to a lot of theatre and concerts, and I'm more than happy to travel great distances to see important performances, important performers of works that I'm particularly interested in. And I still follow developments in contemporary classical music, which are very interesting. In fact, it's much more interesting now than it was 40 years ago when I was involved in that myself. The contemporary classical music is much more interesting now than it was then, I think. I find it so. And I have a very good friend in Brno who is an arts journalist who gives me free tickets to premieres of many performances. So I often go to the theatre, to those sorts of events. And I like walking. I do a lot of walking. And the Czech Republic is a beautiful, beautiful place for forests, for walking, for castles and palaces, and beautiful, beautiful town squares, city squares from the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th centuries. It's very beautiful. And even though I've been living there for a long time, I still marvel and I still take photos on my way walking from somewhere across the city that I live in and do all the time. I think, oh, there's another statue on a building, or there's another beautiful facade, and I just adore it. It's beautiful.
Professor Thomas, thank you so much for coming to my interview.
A great pleasure. Thank you.
You shared a lot of insights into the academia, and you gave lots of great ideas how to incorporate technology into our teaching. And I'm really happy with the books. Now I have a treasure.
Good. Very good. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Dear followers, thank you so much for watching the interview. Please feel free to subscribe, like and follow our interview, share with your friends and with your colleagues. This will enlighten your life for sure.